you know more about yourself, but you also know more about the world. And in that state, you not only become that peace that the world needs, but you also begin to practice peace in everyday life. That it does have an effect on the average individual. So if collectively we could face that shadow within ourselves and shine a bit of light on that darkness within ourselves, then that would truly reflect on the outside world. And like you said, instead of using the technology and that for negative means, it would reverse the polarity.
Well, you know, that's very interesting because, yes, for me, you mentioned before, the process of the spiritual path was in some way, and is in some way, sort of a process of falling in love with oneself and with life, with creation as it is. And when someone, let's say like a Jesus, says to love your neighbor as yourself, you know, it just sort of predicates that you need to love yourself first, and that is a source point to show your self-understanding, acceptance, compassion, forgiveness, on that, going through that exploration of the darker side.
That's why those teachings are so important. Those teachings of Jesus, those teachings of Krishna, of Buddha, all of those collective teachings are so important, because if one's ready for those teachings, it will sing to the heart. You know, the kingdom of heaven truly is only within. And when one finds that, then they will know what is behind those phrases.
Now, you write of healing in your book, and as we're talking about the human psyche and our, you know, the darker side of it, do we as human beings, do we need healing? And I don't mean just as individuals here, corporately, our institutions. How do you perceive our healing process?
That's a good question. I had a lot of these questions on a tour I just did, and I always answered, you know, just look within yourself. But at the same time, when we do look out at the corporate structures of the world and the banking institutions, and, you know, I suppose even some of the religious institutions, there's an inbuilt corruption there. Collectively, I would say if we were an alien looking down onto the earth, they would believe that we do need healing collectively as a species, but it can only begin with the individual. That's the whole process. You know, the micro reflects the macro, as above so below in the Hermetic teachings. So I know a lot of people out there have actually new systems, new modalities of life for society. Like there's technological systems built that would maybe make our world a bit better, where the banking institutions and that would not exist. But if the consciousness behind it hasn't changed, then what's going to continue in that new civilization? There's still going to be war, there's still going to be corruption. It'll just be on a slightly different degree. So yes, we do need healing, but it's the individual, and that's ultimately a choice on that individual. And if that, how reality works, if that healing presents itself to that individual, they need to embrace that. It's like I suppose the Four Noble Truths in Buddhism. You need to fully embrace that, and then your true dharma comes from that, your true mission.
And that's so important what you just said, because it is sort of it's a calling, and the choice is ours to embrace it or not to embrace it. You know, there's been a lot of talk of sin through the ages, but my favorite definition of it comes from a 4th century theologian named Gregory of Nyssa, who defined sin very simply as refusal to grow. And I think we can all, you know, think of our own lives and perhaps several relatives where that call to grow, involving healing, involving some form of surrender to a new growth, is resisted.
I know people who are aware that there is that calling, but they consciously choose to ignore it because they have the belief to perpetuate their own ego in the society. So, from my standpoint, every time I had that calling, I embraced it and I kept moving forward, and I continue to move forward.
Well, that sounds like fear is not getting in your way.
No, it's not.
Right. Now, you mentioned earlier, you brought up the banking institutions and such. Can I read you a quote from your book?
Yep.
That says, money is a manifestation of our dependence. Actually, as we understand this further, it is hard to blame any dictator or tyrannical group, as they are all manifestations of our own sickness within. Very, poignant and pointed quote. Can you please share more about that, about money, how we use it, what it is, and how it's related to fear, as you suggest?
Well, it's related in fear as to keep our dependence upon a system that's sick, like that is in its death rolls. So we are depending on a system that not only harms us in many ways, but we're dependent on the energy that it gives us. I know money has, you can associate money with many things. Like, for me, money is just a transfer of energy if you value something, but I don't value a lot of material objects, but I will put value on certain things. Like if it was to promote my book, I would use that energy to promote the book, to get the message out there. I'm not attached to the money. What we're seeing is people have a dependence on the money, because it comes from separation. It comes from status.
Explain that.
It comes from status. People like to harbor a lot of money to be above others, but then they're also dependent on that money. If you were truly independent, then you would need nothing from this society except for the love of other human beings. You would not need money. So if in any way money is associated to fear, it's because it keeps you away from your own power. When you come into your own power, then you know that you are not dependent on anything but your own consciousness. And that's it. So that's the true essence of it, because money also keeps you in a box. It keeps you in a box of understanding the world. It keeps you in a box of separation from people. So once you come into your own power, that will diminish. Even though that we may still use money, but the dependence upon it won't be as much as someone who, say, loves the fashion game.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's interesting. You mentioned the box, which is something I think about pretty often, about the boxes we put ourselves in, the boxes we put others in, or that others put us in some way perhaps to understand the world, to sort of put it in smaller pieces, but very, very limiting. And we run into this, of course, directly whenever we explore anything involving religion, which is, of course, another topic in the book.
There is, sorry, just to shine light on that, Carol, there is an analogy, like, from that box. It's actually an ancient occult analogy, where you have a light bulb and you have cloth tape it all over the light bulb, and what we are doing is we are slowly peeling that cloth back, and as we peel it back, more light shines brighter. That's the process that we are going through, like you said, with the boxes, but we are breaking those boxes. We are slowly breaking those boxes down.
Well, yes, and it's definitely, and that's very much part of our work here. With the Institute, we talk to everyone, because the more we talk to everyone, the more those boxes open up and go away, and our humanity comes out, shining very clearly.
Another thing I wanted to mention on that quote, when I mentioned that it's hard to blame any dictator or tyrannical group, because they are all manifestations from our own sickness within. What I'm getting at there is, well, especially because the way reality works, if we don't embrace what is within us, it'll show out. It'll be reflected back to us in reality as what we need to embrace. And we are not in any way self-governing at the moment. we are dependent upon something that is external. So the way it shows up in reality is dictators, is tyrannical groups. This is just the way it is. You know, where there's light, there's dark.